Sorry I'm late. I missed my stop.
You mean you forgot to get off the subway?
Not really.
Did you forget where you work? You're only 3 stops away.
I was preparing for my shift. It takes research to do this job.
Okay, so what? Reading Wikipedia? Watching YouTube?
No, just riding the rails.
Welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, quiet movies, loud movies, everything in between. So, Rob, we have a lot of customers who arrive here to rent videos using all modes of transportation. So we see a lot of people arriving in cars, some walking, their bikes in the bike rack outside.
Parachutes.
I mean,
I've seen it. It's happened.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. We know that people ride their motorcycles in here. There's some scooters and skateboards. As far as I know, people aren't taking helicopters into the store, but at the same time, air travel might not be out of the question. You mentioned parachutes. I know that from our parades episode, we have a lot of people that were listening in India, so why,
We have a helicopter pad on the roof. It doesn't get much use, but it's there.
Right. There is one mode of transportation that we have not mentioned, though, and it is rail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to change that tonight. You and I have a big job here at Rewind Video. Among our many responsibilities, we're in charge of the hallowed staff recommendation shelf. Every 2 weeks, we add movies, 6 movies, to said shelf, films that are deserving of our customers' attention. And each time we update the shelf, we adhere to a theme. This week's theme is trains.
All aboard.
I'm surprised to hear you say that because, I got the sense from when we began talking about this theme that you were not as excited about it as I was. Even when even with a name for the episode like Trains and Trainomobiles, it didn't seem like you were really buying into it.
Well, yeah, I was a little thrown off. I feel like we covered trains in our vehicle episodes, but I think, thinking about it, I think the case can be made, and I think I'm convinced that, vehicle performances is not the same thing as trains. Vehicle performances is, trains are a setting. There's not a lot of performance here.
I totally agree. And I'm glad to hear you say all of this. Movies on vehicles are nothing new. And I mean, they make for some great storytelling, as we've discussed. But I think that trains, among all the vehicles, might be the perfect one for some ttally interesting filmmaking. And they can be claustrophobic or spacious. Mm-hmm. You can eat, sleep, and drink on a train. You can fight on a train. Characters can fall in love.
You can get off easily. You can get back on easily.
True.
As opposed to like a plane.
You can do just about anything on a train.
Yeah.
But I think that as vehicles themselves, trains are also pretty interesting. Without a great deal of effort, they go in one direction. Yeah. Unlike car chases, you don't often see trains chasing each other. It's not that it can't be done.
But there's tracks. That's the beautiful part of trains is there's only so many ways and directions they can go.
They have a planned route.
Yes.
And that's something else that I think is interesting. Trains are pretty much designed to do one thing exactly as planned, and they can take us to and through some pretty extraordinary places. The last thing that I'll say about trains as a reason for why I was so interested in doing this theme is that ever since trains were invented, they've pretty much stayed the same, with the exception of getting more efficient and, the cabins becoming more modern. They're pretty much just as they've always been. Big, heavy vehicles moving on rails between point A and point B.
Pretty wild if you think about it.
Yeah.
They are a wonderful form of travel.
I agree.
We certainly don't have enough of it in America. Yeah. But it is a great way to travel when the places that we do have it and places like Europe that have a robust train network.
I've taken trains through Europe, and I wish we had more options like the Europeans do here in America because it's just delightful.
I agree. I'm not quite the train nerd you are.
Yeah, well, I just think there's something special about it.
I do like trains.
Good.
I do like trains. And you know what? I'm happy it's the topic of this week's staff recommendation show.
Oh, I'm thrilled to hear you say that. I don't want to spoil anything, but I was struck by the fact that we have 2 Robert Shaw movies coming to the shelf tonight.
Yes.
Isn't that nice?
Little tease of the upcoming movies.
I would say that, here at Rewind Video, we're big fans of Robert Shaw. He's been on the shelf before.
Yeah.
I'm sure this won't be his last appearance.
He's not the first name you think of when we mention the staff recommendation shelf, but he's been up there a few times.
Well, speaking of guys that are fond of trains or train movies, there are also 2 directors that I know we're both fond of who have dabbled in trains. Linklater has some great films. Well, one in particular on a train. And then Tony Scott's done 2 train movies, one of which was a remake of one of the movies we're going to talk about this evening.
Exactly. And and Unstoppable is, I think, one of the best train performances.
Oh, tremendous.
It's different than some of the movies we chose tonight because the train isn't really a setting as much in that movie, but the performance of the train in that movie is fantastic.
Why don't you get us started with your first train movie?
Okay, next stop, the staff recommendation shelf. Okay, so my first train movie comes from 1994. The title is Speed. Speed.
The bus movie.
Everyone's favorite train movie. This movie can be found at the Commuter Information Desk.
Oh, nice.
Here's the back of the box. A young police officer must prevent a bomb exploding aboard a city bus by keeping its speed above 50 miles per hour. Tagline, get ready for rush hour.
I've seen Speed countless times. It looks as good as it's ever looked because it's in 4K now and a beautiful movie. But for as many times as I've seen this, I forgot that there was a train sequence at all.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that.
Yeah. I was prepared to go 12 rounds with you over perhaps characterizing the bus as a train because it has to stay about the same speed the whole time. But I'm glad you didn't go that route.
That's something you would try. I wouldn't pull that on the customers, okay?
I understand.
I think Speed is maybe the pinnacle of the Die Hard on a blank mini genre. I can't think of one that would compete for it as the best.
No, I agree.
You could throw Under Siege up there,
It's in the maybe top 10 or 5, but this is
there's
right
a bunch
up
of,
there with Die Hard.
but this is, certainly one of the best, if not the best. This is an extremely pivotal movie for this cast.
Yes.
This is, Keanu Reeves wasn't really a leading man before this. And then after this, he was the star of every movie he was in, post Speed. But also Sandra Bullock, she had been kind of building her career up to get to this point. But once she was in this movie, she was A-list, she was Sandra Bullock forever.
Yeah.
Then she was a star for every movie. But also Dennis Hopper was in a bunch of stuff after this, but not a lot of big movies or major releases. Waterworld was pretty much the only one after this that you really think of him being in.
Totally forgot he was in Waterworld.
Yeah, well, I mean that's why I kind of say this might have been the last role that any of us remember him from.
Yeah.
So obviously he had a long career. He was in hundreds of movies, I think, but this was kind of the last big part that we got from him.
Yeah. And he was good.
He was, yeah. He's a fucking crazy maniac who is great at playing crazy maniacs.
I'm afraid of him.
Yeah, I wouldn't fuck with him. He's been dead for 15 years. So yes, this is obviously a bus movie. But why did I bring it to the shelf for the topic of trains? Of course, the story in the third act takes us to a train in the Los Angeles subway system, which is a real thing. I know a lot of people don't know that exists, but LA does have a subway system.
Yes.
The original script didn't have a subway sequence. The entire movie was just on the bus. And it was only the bus part of the movie. And the original title, by the way, was Minimum Speed. Not as good.
Horrible.
Yeah, horrible title.
I mean, just you cut the original title in half and you've got an immediately better title.
Yeah. anytime you can take away half your title, and it's an obviously great title.
Yeah.
Fox, the company that made the movie, was like, well, we were interested,
Yeah.
but you got to get like more than just the bus. Like we want something that's not on the bus, and then maybe we'll make this movie. And so they added the beginning on the elevator, and then the last piece on the train. And so you essentially get the 3-act structure as 3 action set pieces, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you get the elevator,
bus,
train,
Yeah.
subway. So Graham Yost, who was the guy who wrote the original script, he later on went on to do Justified and a couple other things. So he got the idea for this movie is train based. So he got the idea for the movie by like remembering a movie his dad had told him about from 1985 called Runaway Train, and which stars Jon Voight and Eric Roberts. And I actually considered bringing it to the table for this episode. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So his dad's like, yeah, like there's this runaway train and they can't stop the train because there's a bomb on it, and if the train stops, it'll explode. And Graham Yost is like, okay, like I could do that as an original script. He's like, I'll change it to modern day Los Angeles. I'll just take that general idea and turn it into a modern day script, but I'll do it on a bus, right? Yeah. And so he writes this script, but the funny thing is, that's not what Runaway Train is about. It's about a jailbreak where these prisoners like get on this train, and then something happens, and then the brakes go out, and they can't stop it or something.
Okay,
it's not the same concept as Speed, and so either this guy's dad like completely remembered the movie wrong, or was thinking of a different movie, or maybe like a different episode of TV, or maybe like, or maybe he remembered what his dad told him wrong. So like the idea came from a train, kind of. Yeah. That's how we got Speed.
I love that. I love that.
And also just kind of like a game of telephone where he's like, I'll do that as a bus movie. So yeah, I think Speed is just, I mean, one of the best action movies ever, one of the best movies of the 90s. Definitely the best Die Hard on a blank movies. I think it's just fantastic.
Well, I mean, it's got a really captivating premise. It's like, you understand in an instant what the conceit is in this movie, and immediately you're left to wonder, well, how are they going to get out of this?
Right.
And it makes for a captivating watch.
It's an elevator pitch that I could tell my dad, and he'd be like, in 5 seconds, be like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so simple and so easy, but you also have to execute it.
Yeah.
Jan de Bont had been shooting action movies for years and is just one of the best ever. And so like he knows how to do this stuff, but it's just, it's such a simple, great premise.
Yes. And it works. And I was delighted by how the actually existing train sequence in this movie actually fit in. I mean, it works. It's
and it's not long. You don't get a lot of time on the train.
No,
and you do kind of hit some beats that they hit with the bus already. There's the track isn't ended.
Right.
But you do get the the feeling of being trapped on a train. Mm-hmm. You get the subway.
The whistle?
The thing you hold?
Oh, the bar.
The bar, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
that's great.
You're stuck to the train like that.
Yes.
So Speed rates at a well-earned, maybe a little underrated 3.7 on Letterboxd.
Oh, I think that's underrated.
Yeah, but you will find some people still to this day that will say, oh, it's just kind of dumb, and
you can't jump a bus over a...
Yeah, Keanu Reeves isn't a great actor. And also, if you watch the movie closely, like, that bus isn't going 50 miles an hour most of the time.
No.
And also, like, traffic is an issue. Like, it's preposterous on so many levels. And some people think that's a problem. And obviously, guys like us, we don't really care.
We forgave it with Ambulance, and we'll forgive it with Speed.
Exactly. So I give this 5 stars. 9% of Letterboxd agrees with me and also gives it 5 stars.
Yeah.
Including Letterboxd user Logan Kenny, whose 5-star review reads, "This would never happen on a train."
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad you brought it back to trains.
It says, I don't think we're going to be doing a bus theme anytime soon. Or are we? I don't know. Maybe that's up to you. I'm putting Speed on the staff recommendation shelf this week for trains.
Brilliant pick. I challenge anybody to say, no, I'm not interested in rewatching Speed.
Yeah.
because it's great. It's a lot of fun. So.
And also, if you don't think this is a train movie, fuck you.
Yeah, you're wrong. Well, fine pick. I am going to take us to 2013 with my first pick, which is Snowpiercer.
Okay.
And this is nowhere near any of the other cannibal movies in the store. I just want to put that out there as it relates to the section.
I think the
that I plucked
statute
this
of
from.
limitations has run out. I think you are allowed to bring cannibal movies to the shelf again.
Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, the back of the box. After a failed global warming experiment, a post-apocalyptic ice age has killed off nearly all life on the planet. All that remains of humanity are the lucky few survivors that boarded the Snowpiercer, a train that travels around the globe powered by a sacred perpetual motion engine. A class system has evolved aboard the train, fiercely dividing its population, but a revolution is brewing. The lower class passengers in the tail section stage an uprising, moving car by car toward the front, where the train's creator and absolute authority resides in splendor. But unexpected circumstances lie in wait for humanity's tenacious survivors. The tagline is bad, and it goes like this. AD 2031, the passengers in the train are the only survivors on Earth. That's not going to get me to watch the movie.
No.
I'm
not going to be excited.
No.
Based on that tagline.
So, we've talked a little bit about the cannibal thing. I had thought about bringing this to the shelf for a while. It would have fit other themes, such as based on a book. But I had been reluctant because I have the reputation for bringing movies to the shelf where people eat each other. There is an off-screen reference to cannibalism here. It's nothing we see, but it's important enough to the story that I was a little bit hesitant. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you said it. I think the statute of limitations is over. I've waited a long time, and I can assure our listeners that this is not a relapse. We're not about to get into a whole slew of new cannibal movies. It's minimal here.
I don't know, man. Maybe once you go back, though, it's going to be hooked on it again.
It's so sweet. So, about Snowpiercer, this comes to us from Bong Joon-ho, who most people probably know from Parasite, but he also directed Okja and Mother. I was introduced to him with his monster movie, the 2006 film The Host. But he's got some impressive films on his resume. The cast here is great. Chris Evans, surprisingly good in a lead role. He's not doing his Captain America thing. He's actually trying to act.
You can tell because he's wearing a beard.
Right, yeah. Tilda Swinton is, as always, wonderful. Ed Harris shows up, Jamie Bell. Octavia Spencer has a small role. The back of the box tells a lot, and I don't want to reveal anything else about the plot. I will mention that there was a TV series based on the same source material that began in 2020. It aired on TNT. The show was dropped by the network after some pandemic-related production problems, but the fourth and final season is going to air on AMC next year. So I haven't watched it, but I've heard that it's good. Mm-hmm. So this was both the TV series and this movie are based on a French graphic novel by basically the same name, translated from French. Bong Joon-ho picked this up in a bookstore, read it cover to cover while standing at the bookshelf, and this was back in 2005, and he knew right then and there he wanted to make the movie. So took a couple years to buy the rights, and eventually got it into production. But yeah, this did pretty well around the world, but flopped in the United States. People just weren't interested. So critics loved it, audiences not so much.
I think it caught on maybe once it hit video.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember it being around.
Yeah, it definitely developed a cult following. I think that it had that weird thing where I think people saw this was Bong Joon-ho's first English language movie, so I think it might have been thought of as, well, this is a foreign film, I'm not really interested in that, even though, for all intents and purposes, it's not.
It does kind of seem like a movie that came from Mars.
It does, yes. I don't disagree. Stylistic in some interesting ways. So why did I choose this? Well, this is a movie that has a lot in common with Dread, I think. Simple story on the surface, but a lot of depth when you get into it. On its face, yes, revolutionists trying to move from the back of the train to the front. But the train itself is definitely a microcosm of society on wheels, on train tracks.
Yeah.
Social commentary is pretty rich. Each car tells its own story, which is especially fun once you get closer and closer to the front of this. I also think that visually it's pretty captivating. You kind of mentioned it. It has a style all its own.
Yeah. It's not totally unlike what was that? Hunger Games, which I think was around the same time.
I think that's a great comparison. Yeah.
It's kind of cartoony, but sci-fi, a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of like an anime version of Blade Runner or something.
Yes. You can feel that this kind of came from a graphic novel. It definitely has that style to it. There's a light sprinkling of CGI, especially when it comes to shots outside the train, but the train itself was a 100-meter long set that was built for all of the interior scenes of the movie. So I can't take credit for this hot take, but I did want to mention it during tonight's episode. There's a video that I ran across on YouTube from Rhino Stew. It's a YouTuber who does some film criticism, and he has taken the position that Snowpiercer is a sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which by itself, on paper, sounds pretty ridiculous. But I would encourage our listeners to give that a watch after checking out Snowpiercer. There's a compelling case to be made.
Okay.
But yeah, in fact, I've even seen some Letterboxd users claim that this is a remake of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. There's some interesting parallels. But yeah, the whole movie takes place on a train. And not just any train. The vehicle itself is pretty extraordinary. The characters and their motivations are compelling. I think it's definitely deserving of more attention than it got when it was released.
The vehicle's unexplained, really.
Oh, yeah. The engine that keeps this thing going, because there's that whole...
Well, what is this train? Who built it and why? How did these people get on it? And,
Yeah, they lightly touch on some of that, but not enough to make the answer feel satisfying.
Yeah, because, I don't know, it's like, because there's this catastrophe that is man-made that freezes the earth.
Right.
So did the people that built this train, did they expect this to be happening? Were they like preparing for it to possibly happen, but like not putting any thought into who was randomly going to be on this train?
All good questions. Yeah. And there is some suggestion that the engineer, the guy who runs this train, was able to foresee that mankind's solution for climate control was going to backfire, and so he needed to build something. But a train that goes around the world takes a lot of planning. Yes,
a lot of money, a lot of planning, a lot of coordination amongst nations. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to happen for this train to exist, and also like for all the planning and thought that would have to go into getting this train built. It doesn't seem like once we're on the train, it doesn't seem like there's any systems in place. It's just complete chaos. No, the tough guys come back to the back of the train and are like, "Who are you assholes?" It's like, hasn't this been going on for like 15 years already? Like, you don't know who these people are?
Stories about these guys. Yeah, I mean,
it's just like, aren't there systems in place for like keeping these people in line?
Right.
And wouldn't the rebels have some sort of like, I don't know, plan to get further ahead in the train?
I agree. There is a certain suspension of disbelief that this movie requires.
I think if they would have been like, listen, we'd all just got on this train 6 months ago, all these things make more sense. Then you could be like, okay, cool. That's why there's like no system in place for like how this works.
Right.
Also, it's not entirely believable that we're on a train for a lot of the movie.
You feel like we're just in like rooms and not the cabins of a train.
Occasionally they'll walk through one of the parts of the train that has windows and it seems like we're on the train. Yeah. But generally it's just like a set, and there's not even like a shaking,
You want more sound,
I want more
sound design.
I want more train stuff. And it needs to be a little bit narrower,
Sure.
They have a lot of space on this train.
It is, it's a big train.
Very wide
train.
Very wide train sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it looks like a normal train.
Right. Right. Well, as I said, critics loved this. It ended up on a lot of top 10 lists from 2013. On Letterboxd, The majority of users, 33% of them, agree with my 4-star review. I enjoyed an excerpt from the review by James, who said, "Babies are annoying anyway." And that'll make a lot more sense to our customers after they pluck this from the shelf and give it a watch. But
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Give it a go. It's my first train pick for this evening's theme.
All right. I'm going to take us back in time a little bit to 1973, to the movie The Sting.
This is one that I had not seen.
Really? Interesting. This is in the Flim Flams and Scams section of the store. Here's the back of the box. Set in the 1930s, this intricate caper deals with an ambitious, small-time crook and a veteran con man who seek revenge on a vicious crime lord who murdered one of their gang. Tagline, all it takes is a little confidence.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's nice.
I like that. That's a good tagline. Yeah.
So you had never seen this. I have been a fan of this movie since I was pretty young. It was almost definitely the first heist movie I saw. It was almost definitely the first movie I saw that had a twist ending.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not a kid's movie.
No.
But, it's not something that wouldn't appeal to a kid. I think it was probably like 10.
Sleight of hand.
Yeah, there's like it's a fun movie. It's always moving. It's entertaining. The performances are great. There's crime, but it's not nasty. There's nothing scary about it. It's fun crime. It's grifting.
Grifting. I was going to ask, why has grifting gone out of style? Because
it definitely still exists, but it's just not. It's not cool anymore. No. This is back in the day when there was a style to it. You had to be like, yeah, we got a guy, and he's the guy that does this part of the grift and this part of the grift over here, and people actually got involved. Nowadays, it's just online.
Well, we have talked about one movie for the staff recommendation shelf that I think gives us a modern take on what we're seeing in this thing, and that's Focus, the Will Smith movie.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, stuff like this you don't see as often anymore, and probably because it's happening a lot online.
I mean, maybe we do. Maybe there's like actual people that grift corporations and rich people. We just never hear about it because of PR and stuff.
You know what? I'm going to take some PTO next week from the store and do some investigative work and see if it's still out there.
But I mean, you heard about that reporter from like the New York Times or something that got grifted out of $50,000 recently. That's just how they work now. You don't like meet a guy on the street and there's like a fake wallet and all this stuff. It's just like somebody makes fake phone calls and uses AI and email and all this stuff.
Sure.
It's totally different. There's no heart and soul to it.
Right.
Like we prefer the brick and mortar grifting.
Yes.
But yeah, so the style of this movie is just incredible. It's almost indistinguishable, at least to my like unsophisticated eye, from something that was made in the 30s.
Yeah.
The Godfather kind of had a similar vibe to it. There's a lot of sepia tones, a lot of browns, yellows, beiges. And they also utilized lighting techniques from that era. So like they made the movie as close as they could to like the way they actually shot those movies. And another thing they did along those lines, which I had never really thought about, I never noticed until I read it somewhere, is that they don't really use a lot of extras in the background in this movie. And that is something that they did back in the gangster movies of the 30s, I guess for budgetary reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like the streets are just always empty. And watching this movie for so many years, I just thought it was it was the 30s. There just weren't as many people back then, Like I really didn't. I just thought that was just like the way the streets were. I was like, like one car every 3 minutes, But no, that was like just a style choice they made.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much work goes into a big con like this. It really is, at least in this, it's like producing a movie. They do auditions for parts.
Yes.
They have an entire cast of characters that they need to put people together in. And it's like a community theater play that they have to make.
I think during that first horse race scene where it's revealed that everybody in the room is in on this con, it surprised me because I was like, oh, wow, they actually got all these people to participate. And that was great.
That's another thing that distinguishes the old cons from the new ones. Is like the new ones, it's just like maybe 3 people can pretend to be all these other different other people. Back then, you actually had to get a room full of people and wear fake mustaches. And it reminded me of the world of John Wick, where it's like there's this whole underworld of people that are just assassins.
Yeah.
But here they're all just people who are con men, but they're just like moving from city to city. It's like auditioning for parts, or like, you know, they're like actors hoping to like, oh, I heard there's a con in Chicago. We got to go up there. There's big money in it.
I think what we're learning is that you and I are fans of movies that position an underworld, a community of people doing something we didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
And that population being large, such as John Wick, or karaoke singers, or house bands, or in this case, con men.
So the world of grifting has its own lingo, you know, especially back in these days. Yeah. And in The Sting, which is itself part of the lingo, there's a segment of the grift called the hook. And that's the mini con within the big con, which gets the mark to basically bring himself deeper into the con. And this one involves a game of high-stakes poker on a train with a bunch of gangsters.
Yes.
And it's Paul Newman against Robert Shaw, essentially. There's some other dudes there, but they don't matter. And both of these guys cheat, so it comes down to whoever is the better cheater.
Right.
And it's a phenomenal scene. Newman and Shaw are both awesome. We also get close-up magic in right before the card game in this scene, which is not something you see very much in movies, and it's pretty cool to see. I mean,
tremendous.
And they really convincingly make it look like it was Paul Newman. I'm not sure that it was.
I don't think it was.
They do a pretty good job. We've talked before about how difficult it is for actors to convincingly play drunk.
Yes.
And Paul Newman is not only playing drunk, he's playing a guy who's pretending to be drunk. Yes. So he's like double acting, and he's great at it.
Masterclass.
Yeah, masterclass.
Yeah.
Now, I think he was kind of a bit of a drinker himself, so maybe there was, you know, some method acting there. I'm not really sure, but he's great. He's a great drunk.
Yes. I would hang out with him.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to play cards with him, but I would hang out with him.
Absolutely. So yeah, we don't get a ton of train time in this. You know, the whole movie isn't spent on a train, like something like Snowpiercer. But the train's, you know, it's a pivotal scene in the movie. It brings the mark in deeper in, and it's a pretty cool old-timey train.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea of a high-stakes poker game happening on a train.
On a train.
Fuck yeah.
Because you kind of can't escape.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just run off the train and not pay.
Right.
So yeah, and it's like I said, a bunch of gangsters too. So it's just like the coolest place you could have a poker game, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe in an airplane.
Maybe in an airplane. Robert Shaw plays a great villain here.
He's fantastic.
You know, this movie gets a lot of credit for bringing Redford and Newman back together after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but boy, you know, we'd be overlooking Robert Shaw if we just talked about Newman and Redford.
Oh, he's essential. He's essential. He's so good in this.
Yeah.
So the Sting rate's 4.2 overall on Letterboxd, and I think it's a little low for my taste. I give it a 5.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, there's probably some nostalgia there, but this movie's great. I love it. I've loved it for a long time. 18% of Letterboxd agrees with me that it's a 5-star movie, including AJ, who said in their own 5-star review, The Sting feels like the gold standard for period crime, capers, cons, screenplays, and blue eyes.
Oh, yeah, get a lot of blue eyes.
So this is a classic for a reason, and I'm putting it up on the shelf this week for trains.
This is another one that looks great due to a recent high-definition re-release, but, you know, I do have one criticism of this.
Okay.
Everything that you said is true. It's a ton of fun. Definitely worth a watch or a rewatch if you've already seen it. But I found myself wanting to see some of the cons explained to me more than they are. Like in that train sequence when these two guys are cheating and one-upping one another, like, I want to know how Newman managed to replace his hand with a better one. And, you know, there's a couple other instances where the similar things happen, and I'm just like, how did they do that?
I think I kind of agree with you, but also this movie is like already 2 hours long. I think they don't necessarily need to put that. I think the fact that you're asking, like, how does this happen?
Yeah.
It did get me thinking, like, I hope there's like a book out there.
Yeah.
That explains how old-timey grifts work. And I'll report back.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, this was an awesome pick, and I was always looking for a reason to see this thing, and I'm glad I have one now. So I should, I recommend our customers check it out. We're going to stay in the 70s. We're going to move 1 year forward. We're going to stick with Robert Shaw. And we're going to go to the fake mustaches can work wonders section of the store. And I'm bringing to the shelf The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 from 1974.
The original.
The original. Back of the box synopsis. Walter Matthau stars as a New York City transit cop who must keep 4 ruthless terrorists who've hijacked a Bronx subway car from killing hostages one by one if their $1 million ransom is not met within the hour. So, lots...
High stakes.
Yeah, high stakes indeed. The tagline leaves something to be desired. It's just a recap of the plot. It says, we're going to kill 1 passenger a minute until New York City pays us $1 million.
I thought you were going to say, like, we're going to kill 1 passenger a minute unless you buy a ticket to this movie.
So, apparently Walter Matthau has always been a grumpy old man because he's that here.
I don't know if grumpy's the right word. He's... Yeah, I feel like
persnickety.
Yeah, I think that's a better word for it.
Yeah. He got grumpier as he got older.
Yeah.
But yeah, this film was remade, as I alluded to earlier, by one of the guys we both love, the late Tony Scott. I chose the original because after 50 years, I think this feels as much like a modern blockbuster as a lot of what's released today. It was ahead of its time in terms of pacing and tension, and I think most of that comes from the fact that it's a heist movie with a pretty simple conceit. But just as the police who are trying to thwart this heist, the audience is wondering the entire time how the thieves are going to get away with it, because they're on a subway car. We know where it's headed. How can they get off this thing with their money and escape scot-free?
As much as I love Tony Scott, I'm not a big fan of that remake.
No.
I think most of it has to do with how unappealing John Travolta is to me in that movie.
I think you could have put a period after how John Travolta is.
Yeah. But there's also 2 things that Tony Scott's movie don't give me. And one of them is this original is fucking hilarious.
Yes.
This movie is funny.
Movie is funny. This movie
and
is
Tony
very
Scott
funny.
is not.
No.
Like John Travolta is just gross.
Yes.
And the original is so funny. And also what you get is you get 70s New Yorkers being 70s New Yorkers. And that's part of why it's funny, but it's so rich because of that.
I could not agree more. And that gets into a lot of why I chose this. But yeah, I mean, it's 70s New York through and through, and there's some authenticity here that you just can't fake.
Yeah.
And they get it right. So this was directed by Robert Sargent, who does not have a lot of great movies to his name. He also directed Jaws: The Revenge. But
Is that the one I brought to the table?
I don't think so. I think that's...
Jaws 5 is the...
I'll have to circle back on that.
I should know. I don't know. Jaws the Revenge. You keep talking. I'm going to look this up real quick.
You go check it out. But yeah, he's also directed a lot of other movies that people haven't seen, nor should they watch. But this one is great, and one of the reasons is the cast. We've got Walter Matthau, Robert Shaw again, Hector.
So this is the second movie he's directed that's been on the staff recommendation shelf. Jaws: The Revenge was on, I believe, our first episode.
So this was Jaws 5 that he tackled.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Bold choice. Yeah. So we do still recommend Jaws: The Revenge.
Yeah, of course. We stand behind all of our recommendations. Although, episode 1, give us a break.
Cut us a little bit of slack, but yeah. In addition to Shaw and Matthau, we got Hector Elizondo and Jerry Stiller is here, among, as you mentioned, a great cast of character actors who really sell the New York vibe.
Yeah.
This is another movie based on a book. This was a bestseller by the same name, released in 1973. So originally, the New York City Transit Authority was very reluctant to allow the film to be shot on the actual New York subway. They ended up using a decommissioned line, but the Transit Authority was afraid that people were going to watch this and think, oh, well, I could do that.
Yeah.
Great
idea.
Which is something that actually happened when Money Train was released in 1995. But this is not Money Train. Eventually, the Transit Authority did relent. This was, again, shot on an actual subway line. But the studio was required to purchase $75,000 in anti-hijacking insurance.
Wow.
So yeah, the production pretty authentic, but it was also very difficult. There were a lot of challenges with like dirt and grime with shooting down there in the subway. Also noise made it difficult because there were a lot of like actual subway cars on different lines that were going past, and just made it challenging. Apparently, Steven Spielberg was considered as the director for this. I do kind of wonder what a Steven Spielberg version of this movie would be. I think it would be less funny.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So why did I choose this? It holds up. The cinematographer and editor both worked on The French Connection 3 years earlier, and so they know how to make a tense action movie. It shows here. The train we get is no traditional choo-choo train. This is a cramped New York City subway train. So I think that heightens the tension. It's claustrophobic. It's suspenseful. The small train in New York makes it seem like it's much more implausible that the thieves would get away with this. And again, to your earlier point, I love that there's still a lot of humor imbued in this script.
Yeah.
Walter Matthau is very funny, but a lot of the supporting cast that plays off him and around him are great.
Yeah, just guys who are like, this fucking bull. I'm trying to do my job here.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk down. Yeah. I'm gonna give these guys a stern talking to,
Yes.
and then they're gonna decide not to hijack this train.
Like, is your dumb train blowed up yet? I'm trying to run a transit system here.
Yeah. But yeah, it contributes to, I think, that depiction of the gritty 70s New York that is so great anytime it appears in film. We've brought a lot of movies to the shelf that give us that picture of New York, and it's always compelling when we get to see it. There were several films released in 74 that contributed to New York's reputation as a pretty tough and dangerous place. Serpico and Death Wish came out the same year. Yeah. It
was a rough time for the city.
It was. And, even this was brought up in the New York Times review. Nora Sayer said that she thought it captured the mood and the mood of New York and New Yorkers. Throughout, there's a skillful balance between the vulnerability of New Yorkers and the drastic, provocative sense of comedy that thrives all over our sidewalks. And hijacking seems like a perfectly probable event for this town. Perhaps the only element of fantasy is the implication that the city's departments could function so smoothly together.
Yeah. Like, could they actually get this together in an hour? I doubt it.
I doubt it. Yeah, I think there'd be some dead hostages. This averages a 4.0 on Letterboxd. That's exactly what I gave it. 39% of users agree with me. I was fond of Casey Malone's 5-star review where he said, the mayor of New York in this is a bumbling, whining rube who gets loudly booed for showing up at the site of a crisis. And after living through the last year, I'm convinced that this is the most accurate portrayal of an American mayor ever put to film.
I mean, that's the hallmark of any New York mayor is everybody hates you.
Yes. So yeah, that's Taken in Pelham 1, 2, 3. This was remade twice. One of them was a TV movie with Vincent D'Onofrio. But if you're interested in this story, watch the original. It's a good one.
Definitely, it's fantastic. Okay, I'm going to take us to 2016. I'm choosing the movie Train to Busan.
Such a good movie.
This is filed under High Speed Impalement.
Oh, okay.
Back of the box. While a zombie virus breaks out in South Korea, passengers struggle to survive on the train from Seoul to Busan. Tagline, I think something gets lost in the translation here. Life or death survival begins.
Yeah.
Those words don't really belong together.
No, but I'm having trouble coming up with a translation that would make it a lot better.
Yeah.
And
I mean, survival kind of means life or death, so survival begins. Is you could simplify it that way, but that doesn't mean anything.
No.
So anyway. So we've had zombie outbreaks in shopping malls, research facilities, apartment buildings.
Entire countries.
Yeah. Train to Busan gives us one on a train.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic place for zombies. For all of the reasons that trains are awesome, it's also a good place for a zombie outbreak.
Yes.
Especially on a train that can't stop.
Right.
Because the quarters are close. There's nowhere to go. I guess you could theoretically just hurl yourself from a high-speed train, but that's probably not going to help.
No.
So I really enjoy this as a zombie movie. I don't think it really does anything particularly new, but I think it does feel kind of fresh because I think it has more to do with what they left out. I think they like effectively ignore a lot of tropes of the zombie genre.
Oh yeah.
You know, the characters don't really spend any time like trying to figure out how it's spreading. Like we just like they get attacked, people get attacked, and they become zombies.
And I love that.
Yeah, we don't know if it's like, is it a blood thing? Is it, whatever. It's just they get killed by zombies, you become a zombie. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And they don't really like figure out how to kill these zombies. It doesn't really seem like that's not even an option. There's like their only option is to run.
The time that this movie doesn't waste explaining us things we already know about zombies, which is that there's no explanation. They just arrive and you kill them in a certain way. And if you get bit, you become one. All of that time is better spent on what this movie does right, which is give us character.
Yes.
And like motivation behind why these people are doing what they're doing on the train.
But it also kind of like speaks to the fact that they're on a train too. It's like,
yeah.
This is one of the zombie outbreaks. It's not like, you could get into the argument, is this a zombie? Because it's not like The Living Dead. It's a virus. It's a living people getting infected by a virus, I guess. Like they don't really say. But this is a zombie that's instantaneous.
Yes.
So a lot of zombie movies, people die and they slowly turn into zombies. This is like within, 1 second?
Yes.
5 seconds, you become a maniac zombie. And so these people are on a train and they don't have time to figure out what the fuck is going on. The only thing they can do is run away from this as fast as they can, but they're on a train that can't stop.
So they can only run one direction.
There's only one direction to go, and then if you're lucky, maybe you can figure out how to run the other direction. There's nothing for them to do. They just have to hopefully kind of survive.
Yeah.
And but I also think, this is a good zombie movie, but I think this is a pretty good train movie.
Yes.
Not just because of the zombie outbreak being on the train, but I think, first of all, we spend almost the whole movie on the train.
Yes.
And it really feels, as opposed to, in my opinion, Snowpiercer, it feels like we're on a train for every single scene of the movie. It feels like a train. It looks like a train. Everything's close together. There's no like big giant room where something crazy with the zombies is happening.
Yeah.
But we also get a lot of the experience of riding a train. We get the boarding process. We get those guys that stand outside of the train as the people are getting onto the train. You get the staff. You get the conductor. You get the cabin attendants, other passengers. So like it really feels like a train trip.
Yes. Yes.
But then we also spend a fair amount of time in that area between the train cars, which. First of all, that's called a vestibule. I had to look that up. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But my philosophy is like, if you're making a train movie, you have to spend some time in the vestibule.
100%.
The Sting had that. You didn't get any of that in Speed, but they didn't do a lot of going back and forth from the, the cars. But the vestibule, like, you need that part of the movie for it to be like a fully fledged train movie.
Yes.
And we get a lot of that here. So like, all the details of the train are in Train to Busan. And even like the doors, how the doors work, the way they open and close, kind of like the order of operations of how they open and close, and also the door latches. I was obsessed with those door latches. I don't know why, but I was like, I love how those things, I don't know, I like, they seem so modern, and but also something you can only find on a train.
Yes. Exclusive to that vehicle.
Yeah. That wouldn't even look right on a plane. Like maybe you could get away with it on an airplane bathroom, but even then, like it's a train thing.
Yes.
Yes. So you get a lot of like train vibes in
100%.
this movie, not just the zombie vibes. So it made me want to ride this train.
Oh.
During a more, or less zombified time.
Right.
So yeah, I think this is a great train movie. This is a 4.0 overall in Letterboxd, which is exactly where I have it. 35% of Letterboxd agrees with that, so that seems to be a popular opinion for a 4-star movie. Sophie Holsinger says in her 4-star review, watched on a train, sobbed on a train.
Aww.
Which gets to like some of the story of this movie. There's some emotional stuff, some family stuff. I think maybe there's a little bit too much of it. I think this movie would have benefited from being 15 minutes shorter or so. You know how I feel about kids in movies too.
Yes.
I mean, that's also part of it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying not to be the grumpy old man here, like Walter Matthau, but there's a lot of kid stuff.
The only other zombie movie in recent memory that I can think of that had me as invested in the characters as this did was 28 Days Later. And I think that's what I think both of these movies are doing something that most zombie movies, namely like World War Z, get wrong, which is give us a reason to care and keep the stakes high even for the main characters. And yeah, I don't just want to see monsters attacking people. Yeah. I want to know. I want to have a good reason to root for the.
I agree. I totally agree with you. But also, this came out around the time. I guess it was kind of like towards the tail end of like what was the show? Walking Dead being so big, and like that definitely suffered from not enough zombies.
Oh, for sure.
That show reached a point where it's like, when the fuck are we going to see zombies? And so I think this one is way more balanced in that regard. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, I wish there was just I don't know. A zombie movie doesn't need to be 2 hours long.
No.
That's kind of my general feeling on it.
Right.
It's kind of how I feel about it. But it is a great movie. I mean, it's so good. And going up on the shelf this week for trains.
Have you seen the sequel, Peninsula?
I have not.
Neither have I. But I loved this, and I definitely have to give that a shot. Maybe we'll watch that while our customers watch this.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah. Great pick. I'm going to round things out with my final choice from the Nostrovia section of the store. In 2008, I am bringing to the shelf TransSiberian. Another rather lengthy back of the box. I'll get through it quick. One of those legendary train trips that people used to dream about taking, the TransSiberian Express, has probably seen better days. An American couple, Roy and Jesse, decide to return home the long way from their recent sojourn to Peking and meet another couple from the West, Carlos and Abby, with whom they quickly form a tenuous bond that often unites fellow travelers away from home. When Rory gets separated from the train at a stopover, Jesse begins to realize that their compatriots aren't exactly who or what they seem to be, but the real dangers of their unforgettable trip have only begun to surface. Russian cops, mobsters, and the locals are still to come. Tagline, you can't escape your lies. Bad tagline.
Yeah.
It's just lazy. So, TransSiberian is a Brad Anderson movie. I like Brad Anderson. He directed one of my favorite underrated horror films, Session 9, which takes place in an abandoned mental institution.
Not seen that.
It's worth a watch. He has a lot of TV to his name, including episodes of The Wire, Boardwalk Empire, The Man in High Castle, and Peacemaker. But among his films, his feature films, this is a pretty good one. In TransSiberian, he gives us Woody Harrelson as an actual train enthusiast. And
he loves trains.
He fucking loves them. We also get his wife, Emily Mortimer, in the film. They cross paths with Kate Mara, Ben Kingsley, among others. Here, Brad Anderson is deliberately trying to channel Hitchcock. And with the exception of a clumsy third act, I think he's mostly successful. What makes this work for me is that the film was actually filmed on location in Russia and Lithuania. Lithuania stands in for what is supposed to look like Siberia. But yeah, why did I choose this? I love the train experience as it's depicted on this film for a lot of the same reasons that you cited with Train to Busan. Everything from like the lively drinking scenes on the cars to the pit stops that the train makes in the Siberian countryside. It has the vibe of a vacation that I'd like to take without the drug smuggling and murder. And that's really the reason why I brought this to the shelf. It's a decent thriller. Mortimer is great. Harrelson is kind of wasted. Ben Kingsley is Ben Kingsley. But this trip and the idea of being thrust into a foreign land where you're isolated from tourists on a controlled journey and forced to even just like assimilate to the culture is alluring to me.
I think that is something that would be a lot of fun to do a trip like that didn't involve murder and drug smuggling. This movie also has about train trips that I think is part of it that I would hate is sharing a cabin.
Oh yeah,
which you don't always have to do. You can pay extra to not, but man, what a nightmare that would be. I think that's just way too close to be living next to other people.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this I think accurately depicts that the claustrophobia of the whole train, but especially those sleeping cars where you don't have a lot of space to yourself at all. And then when you have to share that space with another person or another couple, it's like, oh my God, this seems miserable. Yeah. It seems like a very particular type of trip that might be right for some people, but I would pay to upgrade.
Yes. And part of the appeal of train travel is you get a little bit of space.
Yeah.
Being that close together in a sleep, it's too much. It's not a trip I want to take.
I agree. But I do think that, a journey on the TransSiberian Railroad especially is something that, under the right circumstances, perhaps with, a more expensive ticket, I think would be just a really incredible experience. Yeah. I do like Woody Harrelson in less expected roles, but I wish they would have done more with him in the film here. Apparently, he said they based this character on an autistic version of Woody from Cheers.
I mean, he is kind of a dope.
He is, yeah.
But yeah, that's something else you find on long train trips is train dorks.
Train dorks, yes.
Yeah, and this guy is a big time train dork.
Oh, he's such a big time train dork. Yeah, it's the reason that he misses his train and gets separated from his wife because he's just like
looking at trains.
Enamored with trains.
Telling people about trains, people that don't care.
And yeah, that's kind of why it felt like a worthy pick, because not only do we get a lot of training in this, we have a guy who just loves the whole train experience. This averages a 3.2 on Letterboxd. I think that's about right. Ebert was a little bit more of a fan than I was. And his 3.5 star review, he said, "It's not often that I feel true suspense and dread building within me, but they were building during long stretches of this expertly constructed film. It takes place mostly aboard the Trans-Siberian Express from Beijing to Moscow at 8 days, the longest train journey in the world, and it uses the train as an asset." I think that's true. The train is a big part of this, and we definitely get to see a point where, the train is abandoned. It takes on a different form than it did at the beginning of the movie, which
more spacious.
Yeah, more spacious. Perhaps more implausible.
There's also a cool train part of this movie where they are crossing from China into Russia, I think.
Yeah.
And they actually have to change the wheels on the bottom of the train because
the tracks were different.
Are different sizes. And that's just crazy to think that it's like, oh, we got to stop for a while because they have to like completely rebuild the train from one kind of train to another.
I'm not sure if that's...
How safe is that?
It's crazy to me. I'm not sure if that's still true, but I think that it was true at the time when this was filmed.
I mean, how do you change... Like, if China's like, we're just going to change all the train tracks in the whole country, like, China's a big fucking place.
Yeah.
Russia's a big fucking place. One of them's going to have to do a lot of work. Like, yes. I don't see... Like, I can't imagine how... who knows?
Yeah.
It's crazy to think of it like that.
I find the subculture of Russian gangster stories to be strangely fascinating. We got a little bit of that in Eastern Promises. Mm-hmm. We get some of that here, and there's a danger to it that is different than the gangsters in America, no matter where they're from. I find it fascinating. Ruthless.
Yeah, the Russian people have a different gear.
That's true. That's true. Fueled by vodka.
Yeah.
I did want to call out John Chromecak's review on Letterboxd. He did not give a score to this movie, but he did have a pretty poignant 3-word review of TransSiberian. He said, "I love trains."
That could have been the review for a lot of these movies.
It could have been. So, Rob, we took to the railways in tonight's episode with 6 movies that gave us a healthy dose of train life and, brought some, I think, worthy rail/train picks for our customers to consider.
They're the rail deal.
The rail deal. Well done. So here's what we proposed: Speed, Snowpiercer, The Sting, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, Train to Busan, and TransSiberian.
Go to rewindvideopod.com to find us on the internet. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and review the show. We could use a few 5-star reviews of our own.
We would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wholly endorse that recommendation to give us a review. Next time, we're back with a cure for what ails you with a movie or 6 about medicine.
Drugs, man.
Yeah. Tune in to find out what medicine-themed movies we've chosen. And as usual, there's going to be some good ones. So feel free to stop by the counter in the meantime if you're looking for a movie to watch. And of course, we will see you next time.
Be kind. Recommend.